exactly 5 p.m., so I guess we can start. So the meeting will be recorded, as you probably had the pop-up as I had. Okay, so welcome to the first EPS Young Mind session of the CMD-GEFES 2020 conference. I'm Roberta Caruso, and I'm hosting this conference with Samuel Manas here. Today we will have as guests Professor Petra Rudolph and Dr. Jan Salo. This session will be about the careers opportunities in academia, and it has been organized in a wider framework of activities of the Young Minds program. Young Minds program is a program started by EPS in 2010 with the aim of fostering the new generation of scientists in physics, create leadership, and enhance the creation of an European network of young scientists. Young Minds has currently more than 60 sections all over Europe. So student groups which are involved in outreach, professional development, and networking activities, all led by students and supported by EPS. And these EPS Young Mind sessions within larger EPS conferences are an attempt from the action committee of the Young Minds program to improve the creation of a European network of young scientists, and also try to give some instruments for the career development and soft skill development of the new generation of young physicists. Okay, I think that's all. And Samuel, do you want to add something?
Perfect.
Okay, so first up is Professor Petra Rudolph. Petra, you want to share the screen?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
So, can I start?
Sure.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. So, apart from being the EPS president, I've always been very passionate about fostering the careers of young scientists, and this talk is part of this effort. It's called a PhD is not enough, because actually a PhD is not enough for a successful career in academia. And the title was inspired by this book, by this book, which is written by Peter Feibelman and is more information like the one I'm giving you now, but more for the American academic world. While the next one, Survival Skills for Scientists by Federico Rosei and Tudor Johnson, is related to Europe and other places worldwide, and the information is about the same. So let's start. What comes after your PhD? Well, if you want to go for an academic career, you have to go for a postdoc. If you don't want to go for an academic career, then it depends whether the job you're looking for requires the capacities or the competencies you learn during a postdoc or not. And in most cases, it's not worthwhile to do a postdoc, but to look for the job directly, because you're younger and therefore you cost less to industry when they employ you. If you go for a postdoc because you want to do an academic career, essentially you will be selected on the basis of your research competencies. And that is what your boss will be mainly interested in, except for the very rare cases where you come yourself with your own money and then you make the agenda. But if your boss makes the agenda, you have to have very clear what you want to get out of it. So generally, it is thought that having experience with a different research environment is something which enriches you. Also, experiences with new techniques, a new research topic enriches you, but you need to get that out. And what is very crucial is that the very moment you defend your PhD, the clock is ticking where people look about what you have done. And so it is very important that you make sure that you are productive in your postdoc. And how can you be productive? Well, if you don't change too many things at the same time. So if you change the techniques and you change the research topic, it will take you quite some time to know what you're, to be productive again. So it's good to change only one of the two. Either you change the techniques and you go on with the same topic, or you do new techniques on the same topic you are already familiar with, and that will allow you to be productive very quickly. You want to get recognition of your ideas, so you should discuss that with your supervisor, because especially when you have a very young supervisor, that person needs recognition as well. So discuss how you will get recognition, whether you can go to conferences, etc., when you negotiate your contract. Being in a different research environment means that you are in a different place. And an important thing that you get out of that is a network of future collaborators. That means the people that you meet during your postdoc, just going for a beer or playing tennis, are the people with whom you become friends. And the people with whom you're friends, those are your best collaborators. So this is the reason why so many people go to big and famous places, because there you have the highest chances to meet interesting people who are also good people and who will not only be your friends, but also your collaborators. If you go to an excellent group in the middle of nowhere, you miss this aspect in a great extent. So, afterwards, after 1 or 2 postdocs, you usually will go for a tenure-track professorship. And of course, you will be selected on the basis of your research experience, but there will also be many other things which will be important. So a typical advertisement will say that you need PhD and postdoc experience, preferably at different institutions. Some countries, like the one where I'm working, even set a minimum time of postdoc experience that you need in order to be eligible. They will say that you need publications in good journals, experience in supervising research projects, ability to successfully compete for research funding, affinity to teaching, and evidence for international recognition. But those are all different things than the ones you were selected for during your postdoc. So you have to make sure that these things are on your CV. So you have to ask your supervisor to get challenging assignments in which you can prove yourself. You have to ask that you can supervise projects. You have to ask that you can possibly do some teaching. If you are at a research institute and not at a university, try to teach at a summer school, try to show that you have some affinity to teaching. Evidence of international recognition, well, that is if you have invited talks. So ask your supervisor and ask your PhD supervisor who supervised you before to recommend you for talks and things like that. You should show leadership. How do you show leadership? Well, very simple things like, for example, organizing a journal club or taking initiative to help in organizing things shows that you have an attitude towards leadership. Also, if you do a little bit of outreach, so just, of course, your time is very precious, so you can't do everything, but you should do a little bit of outreach. And if you become, for example, a member of a Young Minds section in the place where you are going, that's an excellent way to be involved in outreach. when you see an advertisement, and here I took an advertisement, not for physics, but for ICT, because we don't want to focus on the things, there will be lots of things that you need, which are listed there. And the important thing for you to know is that typically there is a difference between men and women when they apply for positions. I'm talking very globally. It will not be the same for everybody, but there is statistics which show that if there are 5 conditions in an advertisement, women will go through it. Yes, 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 no. Oh, what a pity, I cannot apply. Why? Men will go through it. Yes, no, yes, no, yes. Oh, that's the perfect job for me. So don't be hesitant. If the job looks good and you satisfy a reasonable number of criteria, go for it and try to show why you are good. There will be all explanations in the advertisement. Again, I don't want you to read this, but I want you to be aware that you should call up the places, the person for information who is mentioned on the advertisement, and get as much information as you can when you apply for the job. You will be asked to write a motivation letter. Don't make it longer than 2 pages. You should demonstrate with some sentences why you tick many of the boxes that were required. And if there are any pluses why they should hire you, think of them and put them down. What is very important, people want to see from your motivation letter that you have checked the website of the university where you are applying, that you have read the extra information, that you know the country, that you know something about where you are going. This will give you brownie points and put you up in the selection criteria. If you are selected and you get on the short list, you will be asked to have an interview with the committee and to prepare a lecture. So here again, the audience will not be necessarily only people who are from your field. It can be a much wider audience. And so be very careful what information you get on how to tailor your lecture, because your lecture is not only information about your research plans and what you have done in the past, but it is also a way to show that you can lecture at all. So it's very important that you show also maybe diversity in the way you lecture, if it is that you use different means. If it is a live lecture, try to use the Blackboard at a certain point in addition to your PowerPoint. If it is online, think of including something that shows that you have affinity to teaching and to different means of teaching. Prepare for possible questions of the committee members, which means look up who your committee members are. So the lecture is not a conference presentation. It's very important what impression you give. And it's very important that you don't talk longer than you are allowed to talk. So the interview, you should have a good research program, of course, that is well thought through. But you will be also asked questions about your competitors on the subject. And you should be prepared to explain what is your competitive edge compared to other people, and why the university that is supposed to hire you should hire you and not somebody else. You should think about how many people you need to carry out the program, and what funding you plan to apply for to get these people. So you might get a question like, what will be the title of your first grant proposal? Or what instrumentation do you need? What sort of funding do you plan to apply for to get this instrumentation? What are the risks involved, and what is your plan B for each risk? So it is a little bit like writing a grant proposal. You have to think of all the aspects. But that's not all, because the interview will also be about what position you will occupy at the new university. So you should be aware how big your group should be and why you want a certain size. And there is, these are important things where you need to know something about the country. So for example, in the Netherlands, you will be expected to have 2 or 3 PhD students by the time, after 5 years, you go from promotion to associate professor. But you will get the money only for 1. These are things that you need to know. One will expect that once you are a full professor, you have, if you are in physics, of the order of 5 PhD students. So you need to know these things, and by talking to colleagues who work in the country where you want to go to, you can get these ideas. You might be asked how you plan to organize the supervision of your staff. You might be asked what you will do if a PhD student doesn't behave the way you expect them. So what I would advise is that you do a trial interview with more experienced people. And remember, experienced people always like to help young people. So if you ask them for help, they will not be cross, but they will help you to prepare for such an interview and to think of all the questions that you could be asked. You will be asked about your teaching, how you organize your courses, etc. So all these things you should prepare for. The better prepared you are, the better will be your interview. You have to do homework to reply well for the questions. The ones I've already mentioned, but also the typical question which starts each interview, which is, why do you apply for this position? And of course, if you just say, because I'm at the end of my postdoc and I'm looking for a next one, that's not a very strong, a next position as a tenure track professor, that's not a very strong answer. You should have an idea why that university and why you are an ideal candidate for going there. You might be asked why you apply at this university and not at Cambridge or somewhere else. You should have an answer for that. And also you should have some ideas with whom you plan to collaborate at that same university, in the country where you go, Europe-wide, worldwide. So I have seen during my career quite a few people who did not get a job they were very qualified for in terms of research because they had not done their homework. So this is why I'm telling you, I strongly recommend that you do your homework and you do it well. So during the interview, you might be asked to do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so to describe your weaknesses is always a difficult thing. What I did myself is that I gave an answer where a weak point is in the end presented as a strength. So I say that I'm a perfectionist, which is of course why I do experiments that other people maybe don't do. I'm obstinate, so I'm determined, and that's what is part of why I am in the position that I am. So you have to try and present your weaknesses as strengths, even if you talk about your weaknesses. So that's another thing you should prepare for, because you don't know whether you're going to get it or not. So you will probably also have interviews with individual committee members. Again, do your homework, make the interviewer aware what you have done, that you have done the homework, and most importantly, ask questions. Show that you are really, really interested in all the people you talk to and the position that you have applied for. So if you're lucky and you are number one and you get an offer, it's very important that you realize that the first 6 months determine what your image for the next 20 years will be. So it's a tough time to create the right image, take initiatives, try to start learning the language if you are going to a country where you don't know the language yet. Find a mentor who teaches you the ropes of the faculty of the university, and find a guardian angel who becomes your advocate in the community of the country you move in. So you have to be very proactive during that time. Essentially, you need somebody who will call up other groups and tell them, we have this new guy here, you should invite him or her for a seminar, because more people know that you exist in the country, the easier it is that they will be positive when you submit a grant proposal that they have to judge. They have to associate a name. So this is why you need to meet people, be invited for invited talks at the national meetings. And the easiest thing to get these things is to ask people to work for you and to help you. And as I said, people do that. Don't be afraid. It's very important that you don't isolate yourself, but reach out to others. And that's something which is particularly complicated in this period where everything goes via virtual meetings, but you have to make an effort. And you have to get into the practice of saying no, because your time is very precious. And I like this saying by Elaine Welteroth. You don't have to spend your time in doing somebody else's job. Your time is your most valuable asset, and you have to spend it on smart yeses, not on useless no's. And it takes some diplomatic knowledge to do that carefully. Of course, you will have to apply for grants. The next talk will tell you everything about it. I have here, and I'm sure you will get these view graphs, I have here a completely free guide, which is the best one I know about grant writing from the Human Frontiers website. And there is also a book, how you do that. But the important thing is that you do it well ahead of, that you are finished well ahead of time, and that you let people read your proposal. And the people you let read your proposal should be the ones which have a similar characteristics to the jury. So think of who will be judging and get feedback from similar people in order to get your proposal up and running in the best possible way. That was all I had to share for you with you today. I wish you a very best of luck for your career, and you can be assured that the future is bright for women and men in science and physics in particular, because our student numbers are growing, so there are more and more positions which are open. So it's up to you to make the best of this peculiar situation that you ended up with. And I want to thank you for your attention. I have some other resources here. You will get my presentation, so you can find them back afterwards. Thank you again. So I stop sharing. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Petra, for this interesting talk. I think that I mean, everyone has found it really interesting. So, is there any